So our last topic is just to think about the safety of our food and how our food is produced. So we get a lot of deaths in the US due to not eating well. We do have a problem in this country with not eating well and just kind of sitting around. All right. So there's lots of different dietary suggestions for improving your health. There's that DASH diet, which is the dietary approach for like prevention of hypertension or slowing hypertension. There's all sorts of things that you can do to help with heart disease, like low cholesterol diet, liver disease, etc. So good balanced diet will keep you healthy. Well, that's part of keeping you healthy. Exercise is also important too. Um, we also do lose people from food poisoning and food that's just not safe. And so we can look at things and figure out, what is safe or not. Okay. Food does cost money to produce, so water, this is a big button issue here in California. Our agriculture takes up a huge portion of our state's water. And so this is a really important thing. I saw something the other day about there being some crackdowns on farming being allowed to use aquifers because I think they're starting to dry up the aquifers. And so that's one thing that has to be kept in mind. We need to keep pollution down. So we do have to make sure that pests don't eat our food while it's growing. But if you overdo things like pesticides and herbicides, then that creates its own level of problems. Okay, and then farms have to be rotated. So that topsoil, like it loses the nutrients, and so sometimes farms have to be left fallow for a while because they've produced too much and the soil no longer contains the nutrients necessary. And then we lose, natural areas when we clear it for farmland. Okay, and so we use a lot of land for food production. Beef, cattle. Cattle's really not a good, like, economical, practical, healthy thing to consume a lot of. Like, a little bit of red meat is okay, but like the rate we consume it is pretty crazy considering that cows contribute to global warming and cows take up a huge amount of land and they're not they're not the best, at least in my opinion, most efficient use of our land and our time and our money and our emissions. Okay. Meat consumption just keeps going up. And, that makes sense because we have this global economy. We can ship stuff worldwide. It used to be, back in the days of hunter-gatherers, gathering, if you think about it, is really foraging. They foraged for a lot of their food and they would hunt what they could, but they ate a lot of plants because meat was much more scarce. It was much harder to get to and didn't store well. If you're back in hunter-gatherer times, you don't have a refrigerator to store something in or a freezer. So you're eating what you kill as you kill it. So, if you take down a gigantic animal, you better have a, big tribe to help you eat it because it's not going to keep for very long. And it's not like you can take a dead animal and move it from one tribe to the next because by the time you do all of that traveling, it will go bad. Okay? So, rather than ship food in from everywhere, should you eat locally? There's a lot of reasons to eat locally, all right? So when you spend money locally, you are keeping that money within your local community, okay? The less produce has to travel, the better it tastes. So you're usually getting something very quickly within time of harvest, and so you're going to get fresher, better produce. And what's interesting is something that I've noticed, at least in the last couple of years, and I don't know if this is still a byproduct of all the supply chain disruptions during COVID or what, but produce I buy at the grocery store goes bad a lot faster than it used to. So I try to grow as much of my own produce as I possibly can. We only have so much space in our backyard, but I have a fully done herb garden. So I grow cilantro um, basil, oregano, thyme, dill, all sorts of those things. And then I've got a bigger fruit and vegetable garden where I'm growing strawberries and blueberries, like 3 different kinds of squash, eggplant, corn, 2 kinds of tomatoes, mint, rosemary, which I have duplicates of in the herb garden as well, because my almost 4-year-old has decided that mint is the best thing ever, and so she kind of like attacks my mint plants all the time. So I'm growing 2 of them now. Um, so um, and there's a huge taste difference between what I cut and harvest at the moment I'm about to go make dinner versus something that has been sitting in my fridge for 3 or 4 days that was on the store shelf and in transit for who knows how long before I got it. Okay. Things can ripen longer. You can let it sit in your local area much longer on the vine than if it's in transit, because sometimes things have to be picked a little bit early to help them last longer, and then they ripen in transit. And so when you eat locally, you get stuff that's been harvested uh, at a better ripeness rather than harvested at the wrong time. And then if you're eating locally and you're not getting stuff that's shipped in from elsewhere, then you're getting stuff that's in season. And in season produce is definitely more cost effective and better than out of season produce. Out of season produce costs a lot more money to produce, so it costs a lot more money to purchase. And then you support responsible land. Okay, so you're giving places around you your business and being responsible for that. Not only that, but there's a carbon footprint to think about. All right. So there's production, but then there's also packing and transportation and processing and refrigeration. And so the less time things have to be spent in transit and processing, the less carbon footprint as well. So very net benefit for eating locally. San Diego has a little bit of that. It's one of the things I really miss about living in Davis. Davis was phenomenal for locally grown stuff. We do have a little bit in San Diego. There's one of the ones that I actually have seen in grocery stores now is there's this, if you go up, what is it? South Barcelona in Spring Valley, near Highlands Elementary School. There's Fred's Urban Farm, and so somebody that owns that property turned their property into mostly a producing farm, and you can actually find stuff grown from Fred's Urban Farm in grocery stores. But if you drive past there and you pull in, they actually have what they call a salad ATM, and you can buy stuff directly from them. And stuff. So we do have local stuff here, even though we're like super urban. Okay. So again, we get all of that CO2 emission, and oh look, liquid has a lot of CO2 emissions. Red meat. All right. Red meat has a really high carbon dioxide emission. Now, one that I need to work on that's not so good for the environment is cheese. Our family has a weakness for good cheeses, and there's some amazing hard cheeses. So we have to be a little bit better about not consuming so much cheese, and cheese is also bad for your cholesterol too. So there's a lot of reasons not to overindulge on cheese. Okay. Nitrogen, we've got this nitrogen cycle, and so stuff gets converted throughout the nitrogen cycle and gives us nitrogen in our atmosphere and in our soil. All right, we've got fertilizer, so you do need nitrogen for plant growth to get the best growth. So we use fertilizers for that. There's different types of fertilizers. there's something called a Haber-Bosch process that we get a good economical production of ammonia, and so we get a lot of good fertilizer. And so if you're growing stuff yourself, you can actually like get test strips to figure out, does your soil have the right nutrient content in order to give your plants the best, most optimal growth. Okay, and then when we deal with food security, right? Food security has to do with availability, access, and it's not just access to food, but access to nutritious food that gives you all the things your body needs. If all you have access to is, Takis and soda, that's not going to help your body. So when we talk about places like that are food deserts, and then you say, well, these people, are obese in a food desert, there can't be a food desert. They have plenty of food. Well, they may have food, okay? Something that's filling their bellies and giving them calories, but they don't have actual food, healthy things that are going to give their bodies everything that the body needs. Okay, and then using food properly. Okay, so you want to use good nutrition, and again, have good nutritious choices. So one nice thing the community colleges have been doing is most of them have food pantries. So students who aren't really sure about, food security, we do have food pantries on campus that I typically just have to show your ID card. And most campuses now have partnered with other distribution things and typically have like monthly distributions of boxes or bags of healthy foods. Now, the one caveat though is you do have to prepare the food. This is not your, instant blue box mac and cheese, because that's not real nutritious. This is actual ingredients, all right? Real food are ingredients, okay? Your bag of chips, food. All right, tasty, fun to eat sometimes, but it's not going to give your body what you need. What you need are to purchase ingredients and then to, think about how to prepare those. Because undernourishment is a big problem, all right? Undernourishment, you're not getting enough food, and so we get that in a lot of places. So again, remember there's malnourishment and undernourishment. So you can eat plenty, but still be malnourished. All right, and so there are two different sides to this. Is eating enough food, but it's eating enough good food, not just junk.